I have been encountering what I've been calling the MacBook nothing problem. Because about 10 years ago, I was watching a podcast called Mac Break Weekly, and they were talking about the new MacBooks that were coming out, right? But Apple makes three laptops. They make a MacBook Air, and a MacBook Pro. But all three of them could conceivably be called a MacBook because they're like three different kinds of MacBook. The problem is that one of them is just called MacBook. It doesn't have a quantifier or an additional thing at the end of it, changing its meaning or making it more specific. So if you want to talk about that one, it's unclear if you're talking about the category or the individual because they share the same name. And so the solution that the people on the podcast thought up was to call the one that doesn't have a thing at the end of it. Their solution was to give it a suffix, I guess, and they called it the MacBook Nothing to straighten everything out and make the scheme work, basically. I run into this problem when people talk about film because they want to talk about cuts in film, and instead they talk about jump cuts, which are a different, specific thing. They're a very specific kind of cut that most films and they just don't use, right? But when something is edited very frenetically, it can feel like you're jumping around, and that's still just called a cut or an edit, right? Like, this is a jump cut, right? Like, that's a jump cut, like from YouTube. But most movies don't do that because it's disruptive. Anyway, so when people are talking about cuts, they'll be talking about cuts and they're trying to talk about something more specific, and it feels like there should be another word there, and so they'll say jump cut. Another place where I've encountered this is around discussions of critical race theory. The thing that people are afraid that liberals are going to brainwash their kids into learning, people are afraid that liberals are going to brainwash their kids into learning. Yeah, that checks out. Okay. Is closer to what I learned in school, which is called, I think it's just called critical theory, right? Because critical race theory is a very specific thing for lawyers, and you don't teach kids lawyer stuff. But when you just say critical theory, it doesn't feel specific enough. It doesn't feel like that's what you're trying to say. It feels like there should be something else. I've been going with maybe like it feels like there should be a word here of it all, or maybe like a phantom quantifier. Like, this is a thing. This is a thing. There's research on it somewhere. Like, can anyone help me?